Welcome, Moon Ninjas!
Hey, Moon Ninjas!
How's everybody doing out there?
I hope everyone's doing well and enjoying this most beautiful spring weather.
Yes. And hopefully when we do release this one, it will be beautiful weather around where we live and not a snowstorm, but who knows?
I know. You just never know.
We'll celebrate the spring vibes because you know what? This episode is all about adventure. So we're going to embrace the journey and the adventure and the unpredictable and let ourselves be evolved by the experience of the journey. So
yes, because it is always fun. I think in the spring, I mean, oh my goodness, we've chatted about this, but man, we love the spring, but sometimes that unpredictability can get to you a little bit. You feel that warm air, and then all of a sudden it's snowing outside, and you're like, man, but it's just like you said, just kind of rolling with it and enjoying it, because that truly is where we live. That is the spring weather. So going with it and looking at the beauty, looking at the beauty of it, So
yeah, and there is a certain beauty to spring snow and just that feeling of renewal, crisp air coming in, the change. And for me, it's always a time that calls me outdoors. And lately I've been working on a bunch of stuff for the travel blog, as well as painting this mural for Chicago Street Theater, which the blog is happening. It has been a thing that I've really enjoyed creating and adapting to, continuing to produce stuff on as things become a little more active and alive. And that was kind of what Mary had come up with for the topic of this week, is just how to harness your inner explorer and embrace that adventure and find travel opportunities, even though things are still relatively homebound in a lot of places. So yeah,
I know, I thought it would be fun. It's definitely your department, your field, to get to talk about travel and what it truly means to explore your own soul, basically, and
exactly,
just kind of go with what is calling you, and just talk about, I'm just so excited for you, number one, proud of you for what you have stepped into with doing this blog and everything that you've created with it, entwining the art with the going out and actually experiencing God's art, with experiencing the world, and then how in turn that affects you when you come back into your studio, and then what you can create out of that is it's just a really beautiful exchange. So I was like, we're going to do an episode for Jessie. So I am like, let's just tell us because I know you have mentioned it before. It's taken you a little bit of time. You had put your hand, you tried your hand at doing the blog, wrapping your brain around it, and it just was never the right time. So take us through your journey a little bit of, how you got started, this idea, how it just started all rolling in for you.
Wow. Well, Mary, that was, first of all, a beautiful way to say that, about connecting the experience of going out in nature with art and the personal expression, and kind of the long form processing of those experiences, and how the two work together to really evolve and engage your soul. That is such a beautiful way to say that. So thank you for phrasing it that way, because wow. So I ultimately had been struggling with creating a website for my design work, because I always thought it would be really fun to do a blog that shows the process, because for me, the journey is really what it's about. It's all the little steps and the people you meet and the things you discover that affect you, that shape the final work. Like a lot of my favorite books about artists and travel are about what happens on the road and on the way there. So that was something that had always interested me and been a kind of fascination. And I'd had that innate desire to go experience places I'd never been and share them, like ever since I was very, very young. I just love the idea of waking up and not knowing what was going to happen, not having any expectations. I would just like go in the backyard or walk down to the woods, by our house and see what we could find. Like me and my brothers, we would go like build forts and have adventures and walk in the creek all day just to see what was there. So that innate love of adventure and exploration and appreciation of nature has been with me since like my earliest childhood. And the way that I've grown through that, I was always fascinated with Europe, especially. Maybe it's because I had family from there that made me very curious about what my wonderful grandparents would call the old country. Um, and just the idea of them coming over on a ship and knowing different languages and like having to go to school and their names were changed to be more Americanized. Like all of these big, courageous leaps they took just fascinated me. And then with the interest I have in art, that was another big connection. Art, history, and kind of like almost like that mythic prehistory, the just like the whispers, right? The whispers of nature, of places like where there are standing stones, where there are ancient temples and things that are like these glimpses into a history we've all but forgotten, but remind us that there is magic in this world. And you know, just because certain things have been lost to our memory and to history doesn't mean they weren't very real and they didn't shape our entire culture today. So it was kind of this fascination too of tracing the roots through an experiential lens. Um, so this passion for travel had always been with me, and I had seen things about travel blogging, but I didn't really want to become like there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people who are very, very good at advertising places, at telling you about like the best beaches in XYZ, where to get a hotel. Where my roots are more in like backpacking and being a little bit more spontaneous. Um, but the formative thought, that really made me want to create this blog is this connection that travel ultimately begins in our imagination. Before a single thing is planned, before anything concrete happens, we allow our imagination and our idea of a place to shape what the trip turns into. So what felt very important to me is to help connect people with their real interests, with things they were genuinely fascinated by or that evoked their natural sense of curiosity. Because that's really how the best trips and adventures and excursions are born. Like whether it's like camping and you're more of like a hiker backpacker, or you're more of like a person that wants to be in a high-end fancy city kind of environment. Like it's everything okay?
I have children that keep running in here, but it's fine. It's fine.
No, you're good. We're on the Zoom, and so we're each in our homes right now communicating, and sometimes there are hand signals from Mary or I.
Real life. I'm like, go. I'm like signaling at my daughter, That's it, people. That's the little message out the side of our mouse here. It's like, just do the thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
Back to professionalism. Cool. Sorry, Jess.
No
all right. I loved everything you were saying. Like, oh my goodness.
Well, like it's actually a good point to just like summarize when you are envisioning a trip, however near or far, go with what really ignites your interest, that really like wakes up your soul, makes you want to go and see something, and to just not feel pressured by the idea that you're supposed to go here and see this and this and this. Because some people are going to really love a tropical beach. Some people are going to love wintertime vacations with like seasonal holiday associations. Other people are going to hate traveling in winter and they're going to want that summer vacay, like big sun vibe. some people want to just stay in big cities and be in that nightlife energy and that vibrancy.
Yeah.
Some people want to get as far away from that as they can.
Well, and like the top 10 things that they say, oh, you got to go see this, you got to go see that, you got to do this and that and whatever. And it's kind of like when I lived outside of New Orleans when I was a kid, you know, everybody would want to come and visit us and they'd want to go to Bourbon Street. And as a person that like lived there, you like learn that it's kind of like Bourbon Street is not New Orleans, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, yeah, whatever. Everyone wants to go there and, you know, walk down the street and whatever. And it's lively and it's fun, whatever. But it's not, you really, to get a real true taste of a place, you know, it's finding those true different types of spots that just are off the beaten path, like as you say, and then you can really feel the place right in your heart.
True.
Right here, you know.
Oh man, I'm so thankful that you said that, because that was what I was seeking. What I realized in researching places I wanted to see is I wanted to really be going through places off the beaten path and like passing through cities and catching some of the major things like the big art museums and big like bookmark places, but understanding like certain things are very touristy for a reason. In Paris, if you love art history, going to the Louvre,
Yeah,
totally worth it. But like think about when Brian and I went there, we chose to go on a Friday evening because it would be less crowded, and it was an after hours kind of thing they were doing to, you know, stream out just the max capacity that museum has. And it's so vast that you need to give yourself breaks, and you cannot possibly see it all in one full day anyhow. So you're like, let's just go in the evening and appreciate the major things.
yeah.
So yeah, like really connecting with local people and doing your research before you go. And research is fun. Like not research in the, I'm going to read a bunch of dry, boring stuff and force this on myself. If you're doing that, this is probably not going to be that fun. If you are researching something and you are excited and it makes you want to learn more about it and you just cannot wait to go, that's how you know that's probably going to be the right start. But yeah, really talking to local people and getting away from the major stuff is how we have experienced the most magical, phenomenal places that I had never heard of. And traveling with that philosophy was something that felt very important to me to put into the content I was doing, because as Mary said, there are plenty of resources with lots of information on top 10 this, best of this. Read those things so you have the information, but by no means should you feel pressured that, oh, I'm going to Paris, this has to be what I do. Let Paris affect you, you know, and you also, so like Brian and I, we have been able to travel on the budget of very low income because we've done our research into alternate places to stay. Like we used to do hostels and B&Bs, and then when Airbnb became a thing, we found some great places connecting with people through there. We did stay in a couple hotels in the bigger cities that were small just because it was easier to book and we were only there a couple nights. But the best experiences have come from really connecting with people and staying in some unusual places outside of the cities. And our only regret has ever been that we wish we could have stayed longer, you know, because at the time we were restricted to 2 weeks or less of vacation time. So we would really have to plan, and I wasn't able to be as spontaneous as I would have liked. But I was like, hey, we can stay here for 2 or 3 days. Let's pick our top few things that might be really cool to do, find the constellation points, and allow ourselves the freedom to connect those dots when we get there.
I
would
love
also
that. I love that.
It really,
like it's having that calmness too, because I
yeah,
think for me, you know, talking with you, I think it really helps bring down the anxiety, because that's where I'm like, I think that you just being able to say that, being able to say it's okay when you get there, you know, see how things play out, see what catches your eye, see what draws you in, instead of being so planned, you know.
yes, Yes, because like some of the best advice I was given is to be aware of the season you're going in. Summer tends to be more peak season. Winter is typically slower unless it's right around the holiday. And then in spring and fall, it's called shoulder season, where it can be a little hit and miss or more moderate in terms of volume.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was a big factor in how and when we traveled, is we would look at the season, want to be a little more out of the major crowds. But even then, like as spontaneous as I wanted to be, some really good advice was have the major points of your accommodation booked before you get there, because that helps reduce the anxiety and the stress. Is if you have a solid handle on your transportation and where you're staying, you have the freedom and liberty to very comfortably say, we'll find whatever in between. So we would often do a rail pass in Europe, which is such an amazing resource. And like, depending on how long you're staying and where, they vary in price. But when we were in the United Kingdom, we got like an 8-day Brit Rail pass, and that was able to take us from London to North Scotland to Wales and back. And
That's
what's
so
great
cool.
is
Oh
the
my
first
gosh.
time, oh man, it was
Even just
amazing.
thinking about it. Oh my
It,
God.
it was such an invaluable thing, because if we had, for the amount of mistakes we made in catching trains at the right time and figuring out what we were doing, we would have paid for that dearly without a rail pass. That was our very first backpacking trip. And you're kind of like covering the margin of error. We did the same thing when we went to Italy. We got, the Italo pass, I think. I forget the exact name of their rail pass, but it was for the major Italian rail systems. And we were able to use not only train systems, but the bus in the more southern, like rural locations. And
Oh,
it's such a comprehensive network. It's just amazing. And then when we were in Germany and Austria, there's like a European rail pass option that you can look into. But having the rail pass and choosing to go by rail instead of driving, and having our major accommodations booked, even, and especially if we were going with hostels or Airbnb, even if we like didn't get there on time or missed a day or stayed somewhere one day longer, we were able to communicate through that app, through the internet. So
oh,
like that
okay.
protects your personal information,
Yeah, and so
and
you
you're
didn't
able to
have any
communicate.
issues. You didn't have any issues
No,
with that.
exactly, because there were times like when we were trying to get to Amsterdam, there was a like once in a decade blizzard, and we were stranded in Vienna, not knowing if we were going to even get to Amsterdam for the last 3 days, let alone make it back to Chicago. So we were in the airport in Vienna with a lot of very frustrated people who were all stranded there. Anybody
Wow.
trying to get north was basically stuck. And they gave
Wow.
us biscuits and water. And we talked to this lovely woman who was a businesswoman. And she was originally from India. And she was like, you guys are going to love Amsterdam. It's cool as long as we can all get there. But because we were able to communicate through Airbnb and say, hey, all the planes are grounded, we're on the list, we don't know when we're going to be there, we at least had somewhere to stay. And like in that case, our luggage came on a different plane. So we got there with literally what we were wearing and my little day bag. And like our luggage came 2 days later and we were fine. But really, it's like allowing for spontaneity, but covering your basis to reduce that anxiety and worry. Like if you're a backpacker and you're going to go hiking and you know that you're going to take this route from this place to this place and it's going to be a 2-day walk, that's great. Have some information with you on any little stopovers you might need in case you're tired, in case you need shelter. Like it's merging the practical with the dream. And that's where the preparation comes in. And in researching this, you are going to learn about things you've never even thought of. And it's just going to be more inspiration and more material to work with for your trip. In some places like Ireland, for example, renting a car might be a better option, given the fact that a lot of the most beautiful sites there are pretty remote, and it's, all connected through the roadways. So car might be the best option. So it's researching
Oh,
where you want to go.
there's so many good tips that you have, really,
Yeah.
for
Oh,
real.
cool. I'm so glad. I'm hoping to really get
That really, like, yeah, it's like getting kind of down into like really understanding, because this is so foreign to me. This is
Yeah.
something I've never, it was like a dream when I was young to even think about possibly backpacking, but it was just so far outside I had no idea,
Right.
you know, of what the heck I'm doing,
Yeah.
you know, and then
Oh,
whatever,
I get
I
that.
ended up getting married and having kids, and I'm like, okay, I guess
Well,
Europe's gonna have to wait.
We will go on our adventure, Mary. I'm very determined to make that happen.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would be amazing. Okay, so I just have a question, like, as you're
Sure.
talking about this, what
Yeah.
was your first sort of trip doing that
Oh,
backpacking across Europe? Like, what was,
sure.
where
So
did you guys go?
the very first trip we did, we went to the United Kingdom. We wound up flying what's called open jaw, where we flew in to London and then we flew out of Brussels. And we went in October. So, or no, September, sorry, because we had just missed Festival Fringe in Scotland. But yeah, so we decided to choose an English speaking country mainly for the first one because Brian and I don't speak a second language. And we had an opportunity to take the Eurostar from London to Paris. And then from Paris, we could take a bus to Belgium and Brussels and fly home from there. And we were like, okay, we don't speak French, but if we spend the first 8 days of our trip, 10 days of our trip, I think it was, in an English speaking country where we're adjusting and backpacking and figuring this out, by the time we're going to Paris and then Brussels for the last part, we'll be a little more comfortable. So I made all of the basic like traveler phrases, notes in French, knowing I probably wasn't going to pronounce it right, but if I was at least friendly and I tried, we might get where we were supposed to be. Fortunately, it worked. But yeah, like I had this big dream to see Scotland, and Ireland is another huge dream, but that was a little bit out of the way of our route. So it was like Ireland should be its own trip. Let's start with England, Scotland, Wales, check out Paris for the weekend while we can, take the bus to Brussels, stay there a couple days, and come home. And Brussels being the head of the EU, we were able to get a very affordable flight flying out of there. And it opened our route compared to flying in and out of London exclusively. So that really helped.
Oh, okay. So anyone looking to, once things that open up again, and I feel like, why not start dreaming now?
Yes.
So when things do get back
Exactly.
to, where everyone can freely travel safely and, dream right now. And here's your tips, like laid out for you.
What I would love to say on that is, like, we went on our first trip in 2010 and I had just turned 26. I was working as a baker at Panera and I had saved all of my vacation time for this. And I was so excited. And Brian was managing a movie theater and he had just finished his master's in mental health counseling. So we were at this little gap where we each had some vacation time and he wasn't in school. And it was right before I started school. So we had this window to do this thing we dreamed about. And so I was 26 and I started reading guidebooks and learning about what backpacking in Europe would be. I would go to the Valparaiso Public Library, had a great selection of old travel guides. And I read like every copy of Europe Through the Back Door, Backpacking on $5 a Day, the Fodder's Guides, everything they had. And I literally started dreaming through my journals because I knew it was possible, but I didn't know anybody that had done this. But I knew it was possible and I felt so called to go. And I would like just make notes. And whenever I was working really hard, because I was working like food service and stuff leading up to being a baker was a much better job than a waitress for me, but I had been like in that hustle, and that was my way of dreaming myself out of it and giving myself something to work for. So you don't have to wait what would have been like 12 years to go on your first trip, but that was how long I spent researching and reading, and not just about travel itself, but the history, the natural landscape, like all of the political stuff. I basically created my own education because I wanted to appreciate the context of what I was seeing. That was very important to me because I knew that would bring everything I was seeing to life in a way that it wouldn't have had if I didn't have the information. And one of the best things we discovered when we went is we basically flew into London on that first trip and went straight to Edinburgh because we were going to cycle back to London to stay for a longer time. So our first real experience was in the insanely cool city of Edinburgh in Scotland. And we had been traveling for over 24 hours, barely slept. We got there that night, settled into the Castle Rock Hostel right down the street from Edinburgh Castle, and walked the whole city all night. It was misty, it was beautiful. It was like, I was like, oh my God, we're really here. And that feeling, I can't even describe. It was like something I wish I could give everybody in the world because it was so amazing.
Wow.
And one of the cool things about staying in hostels is a lot of them had connections to people who offered walking tours, and the tours are free, and you tip them, and sometimes they'll invite you to go to a pub for a drink or whatever after. But those free walking tours in Scotland were incredible. We had great tour guides. A lot of them are like master's students or local. Again, it's meeting locals. They were local people that had lived there that were like going to university, and they worked for tips, and they were the most entertaining, knowledgeable, amazing guides, and a great introduction to being in a place so new and so overwhelming. And it gets you more familiar with your area. So if you're at the hostel and you want to kind of navigate where you are, you go on a walking tour, you will ultimately be led back to that hostel and have an idea of where the major landmarks are. Because in Edinburgh, a lot of those things in the old part of the city are in much closer proximity than, say, like London or Paris, where it's much more spread out. So I would also say planning some trips, like Florence is another good example, where a lot of things are enclosed where the old city walls would have been, and there's plenty to see outside of that area. But if you want to see like a historical city, there are many. Like Salzburg was awesome. Just thinking of places we've been that were a little bit more intimate, like not the major huge cities like London, Paris, Rome, but big cities in their own right with a historic feel that was easier to connect once you were really walking and experiencing that place.
Okay. So what would you say would have been, okay, can you give us your top 3 destinations that you've gone?
Oh man, I have to say Scotland, because that was the first place I went, and taking the train into the Highlands and seeing how beautiful it is, seeing what the real Scottish moors are and the mist, and meeting people who spoke Scottish Gaelic. Oh my God, that was like such a dream. Like I had some pretty high expectations, but that blew me away. Man, I'd say the second place it's a toss up. 2 and 3 are tied because I love both equally for different reasons. I loved Austria because we went there right around Christmas time, and we were able to both stay in historic cities like Vienna and Salzburg that were big major places, and also go down around Lake Hallstatt to see a Krampuslauf, which was one of the coolest experiences of our lives. We were at the Bad Boys in Krampuslauf. We've actually been twice. It was so amazing. So getting down and really seeing the Alps and seeing mountains, being a girl from Indiana, like when you see the Alps, I cried. I was like, I would totally believe in mountain creatures if I lived here. It was amazing.
Wow.
Just they are so magnificent, and just like the blue, the clarity of the blue and the magnitude of the water, of the mountains, it's like nothing. It was amazing.
Wow.
And the tie for that, because it's so different, I feel like I can't put one over the other, but it would have been going to Matera in Italy. Matera is this gorgeous, very historic city in the southern Basilicata region. I actually wrote my first major adventure stories chapter on it. So the blog, the entire thing is fueled by the idea that travel begins in the imagination. Each month, I've decided to feature a place we've been, at least until we can really actively travel again, and then I can do these things in real time, which will be badass. But until that point, I am featuring a longer form blog chapter with photos and the whole journey for each of these major places once a month. And February, I featured Matera. And this city, it looks like almost biblical. Everything is just like carved into the landscape. It's this perfect balance of the natural architecture of the stone with how people have built out from it and made their homes there. And they say whatever you see is like maybe 20-30% of what's really there, because the mountainscape, it's just like connecting tunnels and natural caverns, and people have inhabited this place since like the Paleolithic era, or like it's I think it's considered the second oldest continually inhabited place in Europe.
Wow.
And we happen to be there literally on the eve of them being the European cultural capital. We were there in 2018. In 2019, they do this thing where they feature a city or a place to be the European cultural capital of that year. Matera was 2019. So they had a Salvador Dali exhibit coming in as we were getting there. And there were these sculpted installations based on Dali's paintings all over the city.
Oh
with
my gosh.
the Christmas lights.
Yeah, reading your blog, like seeing that, and you got some great pictures. Like right now, if you can just say what your blog title is, and then somebody can go and search it literally right now if they wanted to.
Absolutely. So the title of our website is The Adventures of Jessie and the Grumpy Gnome, and the feature on Matera is called Magical Matera. It's in the blog section under Ex Libris Adventure Stories.
Yeah, you guys go check it out, because I sat down and read it. Like I felt like I was like there. I literally felt like I went and just took a little, mini trip to Italy, and those Dali, like that was all those Dali exhibits.
Yeah.
That was like the coolest thing. So I just had to say that. I was like, if anyone's listening right now and they're like, I need to see this, I have to look at this right now. Let me look at this while I'm listening. Because
thank
really
you.
Cool. Really cool.
Thank you Mary, thank you so much for reading that and saying that. Because it's like, when I was like, what can I give? There's so much writing about travel out there. What could I give that's different? It's sharing it through that experiential lens and combining the experience of traveling with the long form artistic expression that follows that experience. It's like you experience so much. And because I'm an artist and I'm a musician, I process that stuff through my work. And the whole purpose is to share things with people like they're there experiencing it with you. So I am really loving all of this access to media in terms of like video, photography, writing. It's a great way to just share and open the book of that experience and invite people in. And that is what I haven't seen with a lot of travel blogs. And so to hear you say that it did that for you is like the whole reason why I created this blog in the first place. And I am so, so happy. And I want to choose places that like evoke that little bit of magic and mystery, that maybe people have heard about them, but they don't really know much about them, or taking aspects of a large city and bringing out the unusual side. Like I'm a big fan of I love hearing some of the people that are interviewed, on the Rick Steves podcast, because those are some of the first travel guides I ever read. And he interviews a lot of the people from Atlas Obscura, which is funny because I'll like check out the latest in Atlas Obscura and I'm like, oh, we've been there and we've been there and I wanted to go there. It's funny because all of the weird stuff is like,
that's another great tip. That's another great little tip to kind of, get your wheels turning with traveling too. Like those are great little resources to go and look at. So that's cool.
They are. And on the blog, I do have a references and resources page that I just call like a living list of all the books, specifically the podcasts, like things that have inspired myself to travel.
Nice.
And Brian, I think I should tell you really quick, the reason why this whole thing's called The Adventures of Jessie and the Grumpy Gnome is because my boyfriend Brian, he is the Grumpy Gnome, and he is my just beloved partner in life and travel. We've been together, oh man, how long? What year is it? We've been together a while.
I think like you guys have been together 12 years?
Yeah.
Or is that right?
It's going on 13 at this
13,
point.
okay.
Yeah.
It's about the same as me and Jay have been married. I know. Yeah. About that.
Right, which is so cool. And Brian is just a remarkable soul. He's so funny. I call him the Grumpy Gnome belovedly because I'm a morning person and he is not. I love to climb every stair every tower, every castle I see. And he hates stairs. I like going on ships. He does not like water. He says he belongs on the land. But you know what? He will roll. He will tough it out and he will go. And he cracks me up because like I'll get a little held up taking pictures sometimes. I love to photo journal, and he'll like walk ahead. He'll come back, he'll walk back up, and he'll be like, this isn't fair. I'm like, why? He said, because Brian walks twice as far as Jessie. I walk ahead, I get up the stairs that I don't want to climb. I turn around, where's Jessie? She's looking at a beautiful flower. She's looking at a rock. She's talking to somebody and making a new friend. I have to walk back, go all the way back up. So, but like, I love him because both points of view are valid. You know, like I'm very much a go in the energy, see everything kind of traveler. Brian is a good counterbalance to me because he reminds me when it's time to pause. And he has this beautiful, curious, inquiring mind. He also kind of looks like a Viking, which is fun. He has like long reddish hair and a big beard. And because we like to travel in the winter a lot, he has this hat. And this is where the grumpy gnome thing came from, because the hat never quite fits on his head for some reason. It like rides up in like a peak. So in all of my photos, you see this figure with long hair and a black, like heavy long coat with this tall black hat. And he's usually turning around looking at me like, what's taking so long? And I'm just appreciating him. So he's like the character in the stories of our travel.
Yeah.
Like
I love that. I love that. That makes it so endearing, really, you know, and real. I mean, real. It's just, you know, like the way we are with our families, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, and two people traveling together, a couple traveling together, because that truly can test a relationship.
It can. I'm glad you said that, because we were just talking about this. Like, some people travel better alone. Some people do great with a partner. Some people love large groups and tour groups. It is very important for you to give a lot of time and energy into considering which one of those things you are. Sometimes you have to try it to know. I can do solo stuff. I love traveling with Brian. I can adapt to group stuff. I'm like a shifter like that, but some people, you know, just because you have a best friend doesn't necessarily mean you're going to travel well together. You have to like, and when you do, and when you do travel together, you have to really hold space for each other's interests. Like Brian loves to collect media and DVDs. He will actually dispose of his clothing throughout the trip because we usually restrict ourselves to one bag. Big advice is pack light. No matter how long you're staying, you will thank yourself. Packing light is good advice. I will share more on that later on the blog. But Brian will like take me to the far reaches of a town to find the media mart or whatever, look for like unusual movies and pack his suitcase with them. So I have to plan seeing these beautiful historic sites and climbing the mountain with Brian finding the media mart. And it's fine because we hold space for each other. And by the time we go home, Brian's basically got the clothes on his back, maybe an extra pair of boxers, and a lot of cool movies.
So
there
funny.
You have it.
You guys are funny. You guys are so funny. Okay, so back to the top 3 destinations. What is number 3?
Oh, it's tied. It would be
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if there was like those were the middle, and then you still had a number 3. That would be the.
Oh, okay. So
okay.
The one after that, definitely the Black Forest, and that's like the Treberg, Bavaria area.
Okay.
Because that forest is so. You walk in there and you just feel its age. Like living around the dunes, we have like beautiful deciduous forest here, but when you go to the Black Forest in Germany, it is like ancient, mossy, incredible. Like the size of the trees, like you just feel the age of that place. It feels enchanting.
Oh, wow.
So as a person who loves being in the woods, it was really fascinating to compare the feeling of different environments in nature. And the Black Forest is actually the one that will be coming up around the time this airs. So that'll be the next big ex-Libris adventure story, is us trying to find the Black Forest during our time in southern Germany.
Oh, that's so cool, Jess. That's so cool. Okay, so what I want to know is, What are your top 3 places you want to go?
Oh man. So one is definitely Ireland. And that was actually where we were going to travel before the pandemic hit. We had bought our tickets and everything. We were going to be there for 2 weeks in April. And it wasn't meant to be. And that's okay. And hopefully, I mean, they offered us a voucher, but that still hasn't been figured out yet because no one knows when they can travel again. But I'm hoping there will be a trip to Ireland that will be there whenever things can reopen. And I would actually love to take my dad with me on that trip. And I would love to go there with you as well. I'm hoping it can be a regular thing.
That's actually on my top 3 too. I was like, Ireland, Scotland for sure.
Yes. And like the Isle of Skye in Scotland, like the Outer Hebrides, Isle of Skye. So we went to about a little bit north of Inverness in Midland Highlands, but we did not get out to the far reaching islands because you really need to allow some time to really see that. But all of these gorgeous pictures I see, it would be like Outer Hebrides, Island of Skye, just bioluminescent beaches, stars like you've never seen before because it's so clear there.
Yeah,
man. So that's up there too. So I would say like Ireland and maybe like Northern Celtic style trip is number 1.
Okay.
Number 2 would be Iceland. It just looks like another planet of amazing, and everything I hear about the people and the culture and the natural magnitude of beauty there.
I know it was hard. I wanted to put that in I mean, it's still kind of a toss up between I have matching where I'm like, I was like trying to make my list of my 3 and Iceland was like, it's so hard. I'm like, do I want, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one definitely.
I hear ya.
Yeah.
There's so many places in the world. And then the third, like the first place I would love to go that's more of like an Asian trip, I have heard the most phenomenal things about Bali and the areas around Bali and like just how it's
on my list too.
So that if I were to go like somewhere that's not Northern European, that's really different from anywhere I've been and international, it would be Bali. And of course, like there are so many other places right around that I would love to see. Like,
that's what I kind of figured. Yeah. I put Ireland and Scotland, figuring I have to maybe go to a couple other places to get there. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. And then also, I was the same with Bali. I'm like, kind of 2 ends of the spectrum.
Right.
Where it's, if I'm going to travel anywhere, and then on mine, I put Hawaii because Hawaii I've been there. Love Hawaii, and
that's
a little bit more. It's stateside, so and
it's awesome. It's up there for me too. Like, and there are so many things so phenomenal in the United States. Like, I would love to spend more time out west. I'd love to see like the Pacific Northwest and the Sequoia forest. Like, those are places I haven't really been yet. So that might be the kind of thing I try to do.
Well, and like I think your sister's out in California. I mean, just to go and take a trip out there. I mean, there's Muir Woods. I mean, oh my gosh, going up and down the coast over there. You could go to Northern California. Northern California is just, it's a dream. Big Sur, all of those places,
That's awesome.
And Pebble Beach,
And you've like lived so many places around the continental US that I love talking to you about the places in our own country I haven't really seen much of yet. So it'll be awesome. Like, I thoroughly enjoy camping and road trips and hiking.
Yeah. Could you imagine the dream of an Apostrophe Soul camper?
Dude, I am already designing it in my mind.
That would be like so fun. We could go and meet the camper community. Like, there's a whole bunch of people. I mean, that's what they live. And they just travel around. I mean, but it would just be so fun to dip our toes in and say hello.
That would be amazing. That kind of speaks to that idea of like what I call backyard travel and finding the magic in the everyday. That's ultimately what it's about for me.
That was my next question. I was definitely going to ask you, what would you say is a great way for people to feel like they traveled somewhere, even though they might not be able to really, I mean, we are living our normal lives here. We're working, we have children, and you might not be able to go and like plan this big grand trip. So what do you have to say to that?
Oh, so much. So like, I feel that especially with this last year, it has been an opportunity for me to really appreciate the things I've never noticed in the area directly around me. Like the first day things were shut down for the pandemic, I went on a walk through my neighborhood and really paid attention to everything. And I grew to appreciate the things right around me. And I would do searches for local places to go hiking, like little trails, little parks and things, because even though we couldn't gather, it was a good socially distancing way to get out and see nature. And it's really about the act of opening your eyes. Like in your hometown, see if you notice something you've never noticed before. Like really open your eyes and look. That kind of circles back to being present, to being in the moment, to embracing that potential of magic in the everyday, and understanding that that can be as tiny as a little bitty flower bud growing up through the ground at the start of spring, or it can be as big as like a whole place you've never noticed that seems really cool.
That is a fun thing.
Yeah.
Like when you do find a local park and then it might open up to like a pioneer kind of like there's different places out here where there's an old mill in one of the parks that's local that, dates back to the 1800s. And that was a fun find when we went out hiking one day, where it's just those little things that, oh my gosh, it just makes your whole day with your kids, where it's like they're exploring and they're like, wow, people really lived like this. There's like little cabins and things to where that is a really cool thing.
That's awesome. Wow.
Well, all right. I mean, I think I think you pretty much covered everything that I wanted to ask you. Like lastly, if you just want to kind of reiterate your blog again, I think it's Jessie and the Grumpy Gnome. Is that correct? Jessie and the Grumpy Gnome.
It's Jessie and Grumpy Gnome.
That's what I thought. It's Jessie and Grumpy Gnome. There's not the in there. So for anyone looking, that's how it's the correct web. My kids are like, I can see my children are getting into trouble over here.
Oh no worries.
Go.
This was awesome. I so enjoyed this conversation. I'm great with wrapping up because there will always be more to share later.
I know. And then just lastly, your Instagram handle.
Sure. It's Jessie_and_Grumpy Gnome. Nice. I think. Nice. I have to double check. I could put it in the show notes.
We'll put it all in the show notes. We will put it all in the show notes. No big deal. I'll make sure that's correct. Yeah. All right, guys. Yeah, if you have any questions about backpacking or anything, reach out to Jessie. I'm sure that she would be happy to answer any questions that you might have, travel tips, anything like that. Go check out her blog. And there's lots of good, cute little goodies on there. These stickers. Oh my God. She designed these stickers. Adorable. Seriously. Cute sticker sets. So check them out and enjoy. All right, Jess. Love you so much, honey. I love you so much.
Mary, I love you so much. Thank you for just letting me talk about this, share all of this. I am so excited. Thank you to all of our Moon Ninjas who listened in. Feel free to reach out to Mary and I at any time with all of your travel inquiries, thoughts, ideas, and happy adventures.
Yes, happy adventures. I'm excited to hear about the Black Forest.
I'm excited. Yes, it'll be good.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, Moon Ninjas.
Bye.